Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for our next edition of PAA Presents, Making Housing and Development More Sustainable Through Innovation. This has been a really great series. As we've moved through, we've been able to engage alumni from all over the world. This is true today, not only in our attendees, but as you'll also see in our panel, we've been able to bring alumni who are not living in the US, and we thank our panelists for working with the time zones and being available to help us with this great program. So what I want to do now is I'm going to introduce our panelists and then introduce our moderators so we can get right into the program. Our first panelist is Dennis Steigerwalt. He's a CBA alum from 2003 and currently the president of the Housing Innovation Alliance. Dennis is an expert at driving market transformation programs. He knows people, money, and how to get things done. As president of the Alliance, he leads the strategic vision and smart growth of the community. Prior to the Alliance, Dennis helped change the face of the housing industry in Saudi Arabia through two key initiatives: the Ministry of Housing's Building Technology Stimulus Initiative and SABIC's Home of Innovation program. Dennis was a key player in SABIC's Home of Innovation program, a 30 million plus multi-year market engagement program focused on encouraging collaboration among the housing value chain and ensuring better construction practices that were adopted all throughout the region. Before and after going global, Dennis acted as a consultant to and developer of residential and mixed-use real estate projects here in Southwestern PA, several of which are considered pioneering examples of placemaking in North America. These include Venango Trails, Edgewater, and Newberry. Dennis, thanks for joining us today.
Glad to be here. Thanks, Jason.
Our next panelist I'd like to introduce is coming to us today from Saudi Arabia and joining us. We're very lucky to have Dr. Khaled Al-Hajeri. He's engineering graduate from 2005. Khaled is currently the chief advisor of the Minerals and Metals Cluster for the Ministry of Industry and Mineral Resources of Saudi Arabia. Through this role as a chief advisor at the National Center for Industrial Development, Khaled seeks to create an innovative industrial environment by making use of his extensive experience in the industry, research, and business development to create an industrial environment that stimulates and realizes Saudi's national industrial strategy to pursuit of Vision 2030. With an industrial and research experience spanning 25 years in the iron and steel field, Khaled set out in the field of entrepreneurship through his role in leading SABIC's Innovation Home as part of the local content unit that aims to localize technologies and create an attractive environment for investment in the fields of energy, building technologies, and smart home applications, in addition to advanced materials. Khaled, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be with you. Thanks.
Our final panelist today is Chris Guignon, a senior project manager at evolveEA here in Pittsburgh. Chris is deeply interested in how the built environment informs our understanding of the world and shapes our future. As an architect and associate at evolveEA, Chris prioritizes sensitivity to urban context and user experience, as well as the clear communication of the architectural idea. His focus on people-centric design and sustainability as the fundamental framework for long-term design thinking are infused in his planning and design work at all scales, from a park shelter in Highland Park to a 60-unit pocket neighborhood in Bozeman, Montana. In addition, Chris also has taught design studios here at the University of Pittsburgh, including an upper-level studio on housing and sustainability. Chris, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Jason.
And now I'd like to introduce our moderator for today. We have Dr. Melissa Bilec. She's the Deputy Director of the Mascaro Center for Sustainable Innovation and also a two-time alum of Pitt. Dr. Bilec is an associate professor in the School of Engineering's Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering, as well as a deputy director of the Mascaro Center. Her research program focuses on the built environment, life cycle assessment, sustainable healthcare, and indoor air impacts. She's interested in improving system-level environmental performance of buildings while developing a deeper understanding of indoor environmental quality, occupant impacts, and energy use. Dr. Bilec, thank you and welcome.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for being here today. One of the roles that I get to do at the Mascaro Center is to work with really talented people and across nonprofits and industry sectors. So Dennis, Chris, and Khaled, really thank you for being here today, and thank you to PAA for setting this up. The University of Pittsburgh defines sustainability as balancing equity, environment, and economics so current and future generations can thrive. Keeping this in focus, Pitt is actively involved in sustainability initiatives and practices across disciplines, domains, and scales. From business operations to research collaborations to fostering vibrant student groups and activism to master planning. Pitt is earning a strong reputation for its culture of sustainability across the nation. Thank you for joining us and following along as we continually challenge the status quo to create sustainable solutions, actions, strategies, and opportunities for students, faculty, staff, our campuses, Western Pennsylvania, and the world. And also as the Deputy Director of the Mascaro Center for Sustainable Innovation, we are the oldest center at the university that is focused on sustainability research. And our aim is to really fully achieve Pitt's potential as a national leader in the science and realization of sustainability. We have some key programs that I think may interest you. One is our Sea Grant program, where we fund really interesting research. We also have an undergraduate research program that really attracts top students. And we are also working with a number of different teachers across the region where we have a Teach the Teacher program, and we're inspiring new ways to teach sustainability. Lastly, I wanted to mention that we have a Sustainability Faculty Fellows program, along with our ever rapidly growing undergraduate sustainability certificate. So thank you again for joining us today. And the first question I have is to Khaled. Can you please tell us about your role in the Ministry of Industry and Mineral Resources? And can you tell us how your work there is impacting sustainability in Saudi Arabia?
Okay. First of all, I would like to thank you for such an invitation to be in this panel. It's a pleasure actually to be the people from Pittsburgh for this long time. I've worked with Dennis for a long time in Saudi Arabia. It was a pleasure to be a member of his team. Okay, I work actually after 23 years in the steel industry. I moved to business development in the home of innovation, which already established by Dennis. I worked there for business development for 3 years, working about the try to localize the industry in Saudi Arabia, try to some new industry using the advanced material from Tabak company, which we are producing. After that, I transferred to the Ministry of Industry. So I'm working now with them as a chief advisor in National Center for Industrial Development. National Center for Industrial Development, we try to build the ecosystem for the industry. Maybe as you know that in the kingdom, we try to make transformation industry. Now we are only depend, or for a long time, we depend on the oil and gas industry. But in the future, we would like to transfer to the industries. So we'd like to make the ecosystem, right ecosystem for this industry, to attract those industries, try to localize industry in Saudi Arabia. So you have to make the right environment for this industry. That's what we are trying to do in the ministry, try to attract the investment, try to make enablers for business, governance also for the business. We have 10 clusters, mining, we have metals, we have talking about building material and construction, we talk about aerospace, packaging, automotive, we are so there are 10 industries, and we can expand. When we start with 5 industries or 5 clusters. Now we are expanding to 10. Maybe we are going to add. It depends about the need of the kingdom. And there is some good success story. Still we are in the beginning, but there is some good success story. Second question, sorry, it was about what?
The next question, actually, and thank you so much, is can you tell us a little bit more? You mentioned this already, but can you mention a little bit more about the work that you did at SABIC before moving into your current role?
Yeah, okay. In the SABIC, actually, as I mentioned, we started in the steam industry. I worked there for a long time in research and development, then also working in customer support and the technical development, technical support. After that, I moved to SABIC Home of Innovation. It's actually a unique model for the business model. In this in Home of Innovation, we try to show how SABIC material, it's basic material, but how we can use this material in innovative solution that we use it for energy, for water saving. You know, we are in the desert. And when we talk about water, it's very important actually to make utilization for the water. We talk also about the energy. We are burning a lot of oil here to generate energy. You know, it's very hot area, and this air conditioning is sucking like 70% of the energy that we are generating. In home innovation, actually, there was a very good solution. It's not only about putting solar panels, but you have to have another solution. If you put solar panels, but you don't have good installation, building, good construction, you are not going to reach to the zero balance energy in the building. So we put all these things together, and we try to develop and working with the companies actually to develop good solution for our country or for our environments. Now I'm going to transfer to the National Center for Industrial Development. I'm also working with the building and construction. In Kingdom, we are looking to build more than 1 million units from here up to 2030. Building this big number in 10 years, that's not an easy mission. Using traditional way of building, it's not going to help. So we have to utilize, or we have to work with the new methodology of construction. At the same time, we are caring about the cost and also caring about the sustainability, because building housing and put the people in the house, and after that they start have a problem with the energy, with the water. That's not now. If you can build it with the good sustainability and good rate of sustainability, high quality, that's what we need the best solution. So I'm working with so many companies actually to try to utilize the latest technology to help us in building this huge number of units.
Khaled, thank you so much. And you know, one of the things that you mentioned is when you have the solar panels, it actually takes a lot of water to create the solar panels as well. So you're always thinking about those embodied kind of cost and resources too. So thank you. My next question is for Dennis. So Dennis, can you tell us a little bit more about your role and that of the Housing Innovation Alliance, and how your efforts are impacting the housing and sustainable practices across the U.S.?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Bilec. I appreciate the opportunity. One quick observation I want to make is I believe myself and Chris and Khaled were all on Pitt's campus at the same time, which I think is pretty cool. All focused, and you were there as well. So all four of us, all focused on very different areas, running around the same campus, come back together almost a decade and a half later. I can't believe that's been that long also, but that's another story conversation. At the Housing Innovation Alliance, we focus on helping production home builders build better. I think that's the simplest way to describe it. So we're a forward-thinking national network of about 200 or so companies that are responsible for delivering about 30% of annual housing starts. And our mission is to focus on attainability at scale. So we're looking, and we define attainability, we look at that as households that are making between $70,000 and $120,000 a year, that they can get the home they deserve at the value while the industry can still thrive, because it's important that everybody in the value chain gets to participate in the benefits of the process. How we are driving, let's say, innovation and sustainability, I think the main effort of our focus right now is going to be around offsite construction and looking at the process of delivering the home itself. So a big effort that we focus on is making sure that you're looking at all the inefficiencies and removing the inefficiencies from the value chain that are there today, or the delivery chain as we call it. And we find offsite construction to be a major opportunity that it's not new, right? This has been around for decades, but it's something that we believe has a lot of untapped potential in just reducing waste and increasing labor productivity. Another area of focus for us is going to be on the durability and resiliency of materials. So as we're putting these buildings up, making sure that they're lasting as long as we need them to last. And when we look at this, maybe I could stand back. We always look through innovation through 4 different lenses. It's going to be the business model of building. We're going to look at it through the people strategy, so that's your internal and external customers. We're going to look at it through the product types that are being introduced into the market, and then ultimately that process. So I hit on a couple things there. Another area that we're looking at right now is the build for rent market segment. So build for rent is booming. This is, the idea around single family rentals gained a lot of traction out of the Great Recession in 2010, 2011, 2012. Now there's a lot of builders and developers out there building purpose-built rental communities to meet an unaddressed demand for housing that could provide, for a major housing opportunity in, let's say, the middle market, what we'll describe. And we see this as there's so many single owners that are going to be developing these communities across the country, or single point of an end user, so to speak. We're able to now use this as a point to drive innovation across the marketplace. So now you have investment horizons of 25 years versus handing over a home to a homeowner, and then there's a shortened warranty period. Now you're looking at upfront investment for total operating cost exchange, which I think is a great opportunity to drive innovation in the space, and a moment in time that we're looking to capture. So I kind of covered big picture who we are and got into some of the specifics. Couldn't help myself.
No, Dennis, I thank you so much. And obviously thinking about equitable housing right now is really critical in the US, especially as we face many of our challenges. It's really interesting. It looks like you and Khaled really had some fun times together in Dubai and Riyadh. And it sounds like you worked together very closely. And so can you talk a little bit more about the work that you did together?
Sure, I can tell you it's interesting. So your friends from Pittsburgh will find you anywhere, right? So here we are, 7,500 miles away. And I remember sitting in a conference room in Jubail when Khaled worked for the Sabix Metals division when we were first setting up the Home of Innovation. And we started talking a little bit, and he finds out I'm from Pittsburgh. We find out he was at Pitt. I'm pretty sure, like I said, we might have been in the same elevator at some point. So that was the first time when we worked together. It was actually helping to get the Home of Innovation up and off the ground. And Khaled hit on a couple points. I think he's a bit humble about what the project is. I mean, he needs to be able to take credit for what he helped drive here. It was the first LEED Platinum certified home in the Middle East. It was the first net zero energy certified home in the Middle East. It was a physical manifestation of Sabic's business strategy at the time, which became an award-winning facility up against Boeing, Apple, Honeywell. I mean, it was really a rock star project that deserves to get some credit. So I throw a lot of that to you, Khaled, and championing that. So I think that was, for me, it was an opportunity to create awareness around different building products and technologies, as Khaled mentioned, but also to build out a more sustainable economic ecosystem within Saudi Arabia, which I think was really important. And for us, it was about showcasing shelf-ready and shovel-ready technologies and solutions in this interactive exhibition space. So that was the first time we got to work together. Then Khaled took over the role of running that facility while I was working with the Ministry of Housing. So he and I got to partner together while I was helping the Ministry of Housing drive kind of the translation of offsite technologies into the country. So we were kind of doing a global screening process and identifying the best partners for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. I was able to actually work with Khaled now as leading the Home of Innovation as a technology transfer partner and identifying companies. And then after I had moved from the ministry into the private sector and started working with a local joint venture to open up a home building company, I was able to work with him yet again while he was leading the Home of Innovation. So I think what's really interesting about this kind of this conversation and how what he's doing goes full circle is Home of Innovation lived as a marketing program, but through his leadership, it got repositioned as a local content development strategy, which to me is exactly where it needs to be to achieve the goals we talked about earlier in Saudi Arabia. And we had a heck of a lot of fun in Dubai on the side.
Thank you, Dennis. Chris, this next question is for you. You've been hearing a little bit from the other panelists who are really working in the sustainability housing space. Can you talk a little bit more about your work at evolveEA? And especially, can you talk a little bit about your Bozeman project and any projects you have in Pittsburgh that you want to feature?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. And feeling like I really missed out on the Pitt to Saudi Arabia pipeline. But that sounds great. Yeah, so Evolve Environment Architecture is a multidisciplinary firm, and so we like to say that we work at the intersection between sustainability and the built environment. And so we do sustainability consulting, which includes kind of working with building frameworks like LEED or Living Building Challenge, those types of things. And then we also engage in architecture and planning work. And so my work there is really in architectural design and urban design as well. And it allows us to really kind of affect a wide variety of types of projects, all with a focus of sustainability, and of course, all with an idea towards how placemaking and community comes together. So some of the work that we've engaged in more recently, which is one of them is the project in Bozeman that you were referencing, is a 62 unit, it's really a pocket neighborhood just to the north of the city of Bozeman in Montana. These are all high performance units, and half of those units are meant for what they are calling the missing middle. And so it's an affordability model for those who don't qualify for what we might understand as affordable housing generally, but are priced out of the market rate units in that area. And so Bozeman has really kind of increased in popularity. It's become a bit of a resort town in many ways. And so home prices are really kind of astronomical in the past 5 to 10 years. So a lot of the people who work in the city, firefighters, nurses, people who work in city government, can't afford to live in the city. And so this model is to try to create that space that's in between kind of market rate and affordable homes. It's a fantastic project. I could talk about it a lot. It should get into the ground very soon. They've been working on it for a long time. They reached out and we were able to do kind of a planning process as well as the schematic design for those houses. And it's really based on a kind of very modest size homes, but a compact and dense development. And we pare down, the idea is to pare down the kind of private spaces and really increase the community kind of open spaces. And so in that we can you get to know your neighbors a lot better. It's in a fantastic site right next to a brand new park. And so there's a lot of opportunities, and it's hopefully going to be kind of a new model for that area, and for other kind of places like Jackson or places out in the West that are dealing with some of the same struggles there. Additionally, I'll just mention that a little closer to home, we're working on the design of the Rachel Carson Eco Village, which is up in Gibsonia on Chatham University's Eden Hall campus, and that's 35 units, and we're kind of right in the schematic design process for that, but it's going to be a really interesting project. Both of those projects are trying to attain a passive house level for building performance.
So thank you so much, Chris. I hope to visit Bozeman one day, as well as many of the other cities across the world. And one of the questions that I had, since you brought this up, Chris and Dennis and Khaled, I'd love to hear your opinion as well. Chris, you mentioned that the specific project that you're working on, the Rachel Carson project, is going for the passive house certification. Is there a rating system that you see emerging as kind of the leader within this space? And I'm gonna, after you answer that, Chris, I am gonna ask Dennis and Khaled as well to answer as well.
Yeah, I mean, what we've seen is that there's, LEED, which I think most people are familiar with. That rating system has really been kind of mainstream for some time, and is still a kind of leader in the design and construction industry. But we are seeing an increased interest in passive house, especially around kind of housing. And so that's kind of just in the past 5 years, it's really the number of passive house projects in the country and also, in our region has increased considerably. And so, I'm very interested in passive house, not only because of the energy implications that it has, but also because our region deals with issues of air quality, and there's opportunities there for passive house to kind of mitigate for the indoor environments, our outdoor air quality issues.
And I would just add, well, also maybe another one. And so, Dennis, could you comment a little bit on the kind of the green building rating systems within your world and the ones that you really think are kind of driving innovation?
So it's a great question, and I think to Chris's point, you see there's a lot more interest in those rating systems related directly around energy performance. I think that the last year certainly proved to us as well. Anything around indoor air quality is gaining traction, and the interesting thing, these concepts aren't new, right? These have been around for a while, but it takes a moment in time for everybody to have a light bulb go off and realize how important some of these things are. I also think some of the things that we did at the Home of Innovation, which you're starting to see in the U.S. market more frequently, is making these making the data data visualization, so you can actually see how your habits are impacting your environment, both indoor, and the effects it's having on the environment around you and outside of you. So I think that's important. I'm going to answer this question and kind of go around it in that I don't know that there's any one rating system that's fit within our community today that many are following closely. I mean, a lot of them are building to net zero energy or net positive standards, but you don't see a lot of the production home builders in our market following a specific rating system. What we find is the ones that are building a more advanced or high performance product, or taking a holistic view from the community setting in, are really looking at it and saying, what is the balance of my location, my materials, and my outcomes, and what makes the most sense for us? And it's a targeted blend of, and ultimately they have to generate the yield they need to survive as a business, right? So there's this system that has not been necessarily designed right now for achieving the certifications, but what's the best we can do and get just close enough, and kind of where's the optimized value in that equation is a lot of what we're seeing. But and to your point, Dr. Bilec, we did see a lot on the well standard over the past year. We've seen an increased interest in that area. But on the single family side, we're just not seeing a lot of it with our production builders.
Thank you, Dennis. Khaled?
Yeah.
Same question to you. What do you see? Yeah. What do you see? Or are you creating your own new rating system?
Actually, when we talk about sustainability and talk about the energy saving in the housing and also water saving, gray water system, talking about the solar panels and the installation, all this stuff, it's something new in Saudi Arabia. And it's culture. You have to build this one step by step. People, they are not familiar with this type of solution. And maybe this solution before, it was very expensive to do the gray water system in your house, or to put the solar panels, or to put the ecosystem around the solar panel, from the installation, the type of glass that you are using, design of the building. But now people start understanding. From Home Innovation, we try to improve this a little bit in the culture. And also there is a movement in the Ministry of Housing for this sustainable house, or also smart house applications. So there is movement. But when we talk about rating and there is a standard for that, no, there is no actually a real standard for that at the moment. We try to put, or the government try to put some standard for that, but still I believe it's not that much mature. It needs some time for people to believe. Nowadays, the expense of the water, it's not like before. They took the government was paying for that, but now they move their hands, and we have to pay more and more. So based on that, people start find some good solution for that. Also for electricity, before it was a little bit cheap, but today it's not cheap anymore. We are paying 3 times or 4 times what we paid like 5 or 6 years ago. So people try to find new and good solution for saving energy. In the end, there is a movement, but there is no standard still the movement for that. The market is not that much mature, but we try to build it better.
Thank you so much. And you may have addressed this a little bit in your comment, Khaled. You know, one of the things that we're all experiencing is increase in prices because of the issues of material shortages in the global supply chain. And obviously as cost increase, and that, you know, if you look at the three-legged stool of sustainability, one is economics, right? So Khaled, can you talk a little bit more about if like the global supply chain crisis and how that's impacting your purview and or in a broader sense?
Of course, when we talk about the COVID-19, which happened during the last year, we feel that yes, if you are not owning your industry and you are not strong in your industry, when we talk about the basic things, you will be in trouble. When you talk about your food, you talk about the medicine. That's the most important thing for people. Maybe I'm going to talk about the other things, luxury. When we talk about the cars and other things, it's important, but you can live without it. So it's since beginning actually for the last 5 or 6 years, we are moving toward the industry, like try to build another industry in Saudi Arabia, try to talk about our resources and how we can utilize mineral resources and other resources around us. But we feel actually we need to move faster during the last year after the pandemic, because as you mentioned, this one talk about supply chain and the value chain for all the products. We feel that we cannot survive if we are not going to build the real industry in the country. There is a good movement, but still we need to push more and more toward that. We are in the right direction, but you know, to transfer a country from oil-based to industrial-based, it's a long time. And when we talk about the other countries around that, maybe it's not like in 5-10 years you can do something like that. It's the culture, and you have to develop the people around you, and the supply chain, ecosystem, everything around you to reach this point. Maybe if we make this conversation after 2 or 3 years, maybe we have we will be in better position than that.
Yeah, thank you. Dennis, same question to you. What are you thinking about the prices and the global supply chain and how that could potentially be impacting sustainability?
Oh, it's just a good thing we don't use lumber to build houses, right? Come on, got to get a few smiles. Yeah, well, it's just the most, the most obvious supply chain issue that we're facing, that everybody kind of sees all over the papers. It's, I think housing, probably not since 2008 to 2012, has been in the papers as much as it has this, the past year and a half or so. I heard this really interesting term at the beginning of the year. It was global synchronicity. And it was kind of the description of the fact that it took decades for our supply chains to build out the way they were. And then all of a sudden, boom, right? They just cut the cord, and all of a sudden everything unraveled, and you start to see where all the kinks are and where all the inconsistencies are. So I think over the past year and a half, yeah, the members in our community and our network, the builders, everybody, the product manufacturers, they've all felt the effects of, not the direct effects of what COVID had caused, but then also the ripple effects and kind of the knock on of what all this means for the industry. So I think that it has forced, I think in many ways, there was some positive outcomes, that it forced people to rethink their systems and their processes. It forced them to rethink how they're sourcing materials and where they're sourcing them from, to Khaled's point. And it created an opportunity to kind of take a fresh look. Now, the caveat to that is there was a very short window where that happened. And then all of a sudden the market roared back when everything kind of quieted down. And when it roared back, then it became all hands on deck to just try and keep the machine on the rails. And now you have businesses that are, they're hard up for their labor being one of the biggest inputs. They can't get their hands on. The land supply is a major issue. So you have, two of your key ingredients on the front end you can't get. So the supply portion of it, it has to just work itself out in some ways. But I think it is. I think that the true benefit there is forcing us to think differently about the inefficiencies in our operating environment. Moving more towards, I think, this accelerated digitization for the industry, not just from a sales and consumer engagement perspective, but certainly in how we're managing our businesses and how far in the supply chain we're looking. I think a lot of organizations were happy to be only 1 or 2 steps. Now they're understanding who their suppliers are, because that all is going to have an effect if boats are sitting on docks and we can't get the hinges to go on the doors, and we have 40 houses we're waiting to close. So I think it's been a nice, in that way, it's been a good forcing function to teach us to rethink how we're putting all the pieces together, which is something that, is as everybody's reported over the last decade or so, it's needed to be done. I wish it wouldn't have happened in this way, but at least now we should all be better off for it.
Yeah, one of the things that I've keep reminding myself over the last 12, 14 months is to never waste a crisis. And I think that that's a really important thing to keep remembering. Now, Chris, I have a question for you, my friend. Obviously, we have all been thinking about issues of equity and justice, and really how these ideas are integrated into housing, manufacturing, and development. You talked a little bit about the equity and justice in your Bozeman project. Can you talk a little bit about this in the Pittsburgh region?
Yeah, I mean, you said it, that the way that we understand sustainability is kind of these 3 pillars, right? Which is the environmental aspect, which is what kind of most of us think of when we say green architecture or something along those lines. But the economics, which we were just kind of touching on, is the other portion. And then, what's really kind of become very clear, just very, very kind of potently clear is that equity is this absolutely critical piece of understanding what sustainability means and what sustainable communities and sustainable development means. And it's also kind of the trickiest of them. It's the kind of the most kind of wicked problem to solve, I think. I mean, just to say, I teach design studios, which I think Jason mentioned in my intro, at University of Pittsburgh. And we spend a long time kind of trying to, it's a very foundational understanding of sustainability that we need to get across, because it's an undergraduate program. And for many of the students, the first time that they're really thinking about some of these issues. And I think some of them are surprised and then gratified to know that, that equity is a piece of this conversation. And so we try to make sure that that they understand that, so that as the next generation kind of enters this industry, it's an absolute foregone conclusion that we're talking about it. I mean, I think, what we like to do is at Evolve is work with, it's kind of, our clients are small communities or nonprofits. We try to work in a lot of spaces where there are underserved communities, and create a very robust community process around any design problem that we may have. So kind of the first step is a matter of engagement and making sure that there are a number of voices at the table. And I think that's kind of a big, first step to any design process for really any project. I mean, we don't do a lot of single family homes. So we tend to have the ability to kind of invite in, the public. I think we understand we're always trying to understand better the problems of our region and of Pittsburgh. We have very kind of clear, racial justice issues, and those kind of go hand in hand with kind of the economic issues of the region. And I think, you know, like if we're talking about housing, affordability becomes this kind of the door to understand how to bridge some of these gaps here. So we're always looking for ways to understand affordability, and not just in first cost, but in kind of long-term costs. So we talked about something like Passive House. You know, the real kind of opportunity with something like Passive House is that if you're creating housing, and those first costs are being absorbed one way or the other, either through, you know, market rates or subsidization or philanthropic funding, that the ability after potentially a slight premium on the construction is that then you have, you know, the potential for 90% savings in, you know, in heating costs or in energy costs. And those, of course, are then passed on to the homeowners. So there's that kind of additional ability to start to offset some of the ongoing expenses, and that goes into, you know, long-term wealth building potential. So that's why, you know, what's kind of at a macro level, we care about the environment, we care about, you know, less carbon footprint, less fossil fuel consumption, but really, you know, that all goes hand in hand with passing on savings to residents.
Thank you so much, Chris. The next question I have is kind of near and dear to my heart. I've been doing a lot of work in the area of circular economy. And if you're not familiar with circular economy, the general idea behind it is that you not only recycle products, but you reuse them for equal value or higher value. And I became really interested in circular economy in the built environment because, you know, I don't think we're going to meet our carbon goals without innovative strategies like circular economy. And because the built environment is such a contributor to climate change, we need diverse strategies. One of the things that we talked about kind of in our pre-event planning was this concept around circular economy. So Dennis, can you talk a little bit more about what you think about circular economy is and how it is or isn't playing a role in housing sustainability and innovation?
Yeah, sure. Before I get into that, I'd love to just hit on something that Chris mentioned here in context of the equity conversation. You know, one of the things that we found in our discussions as we were speaking through, you know, the health and wellness aspects of what's going on in real estate development. It really came back to health is wealth, and the data around if you know healthier individuals and families over the long term perform better across all aspects of life. And there's a huge component of health that is linked back to both mental and physical health that links back to having a safe and secure home. So I think that, you know, the work that you're doing in Bozeman and the work that some of the master plan community developers in our community do perform is critical to maintain that balance. And one of the things, and this kind of segues into the circular economy piece, one of the things we do to emphasize that is we're looking for what are the opportunities we have to improve the broader industry that can then have trickle down effects or ripple effects to all segments of the marketplace. And I, you know, again, I highlight that, you know, what we do in offsite construction as an example, but I think what can happen in offsite construction that can improve productivity and bring down overall construction costs while improving the durability and quality of a product. And ultimately, if designed appropriately with the right systems in place, you have something that's going to perform a lot better and have a lower total cost of ownership. Then you can create a scenario and provide accessibility and that sense of comfort in place to a lot of folks. On the circular economy piece, so I you know, when I think about this, I go from, all right, how does my car tire become a playground mat, become mulch in a commercial garden space, right? That's not the best example, but I've seen that applied until dogs start chewing on it. Doesn't work. I know we're looking for a higher added value play. But one of the things, so when we were working in Saudi Arabia and some of the projects we've actually even pitched in the United States as a real estate developer, we've looked at it, we looked at it from society's perspective first and said, how do we create more value let's create the economic value locally with the land. And so we focus on offsite construction that was built on site. So it was a temporary structure designed for 10 years that would serve the build out of a community over the course of multiple phases. So you reduce your transportation requirements. You're actually having a workforce that lives around the community that can serve that community. Ultimately, it is kind of the Henry Ford approach, right? Make sure your employees can buy your house. This kind of concept is what we were kind of rolling out. And the idea was then after you've built out that community, you repurpose the factory and it becomes a community center or something similar, or it becomes a vertical apartment tower where you can actually add density, and it would be the new neighborhood center. So that concept, so when we were doing that, but it was all driven around, in Saudi at the time, it was driven around the idea of how do we localize the construction industry, not just from a materials perspective, but from the labor perspective. And we worked closely with Khaled and his team, and it was really, and modular construction offsite was volumetric module was the best approach at the time. We started introducing it via panelized solutions. So from, that's kind of how we've approached circular construction in projects. And at the time, or circular economy at the time, I didn't really think of it that way. It wasn't a big concept for us, 7 or 8 years ago when we were working on those projects, but now I can kind of start to see where that would bring some of it in. It doesn't talk necessarily about the material reuse, but we were building better quality product with less impact on the environment was the concept at the time. I think, looking at what we're doing here, I think this is something where we're going to see more and more demand. I mean, over the course of the last year, you see a number of both publicly traded builders and private builders starting to release ESG reports. So they're starting to hold themselves accountable. And I think if you're not holding yourself accountable, and actually is the first major step, right, to generating some awareness around this. So we're really excited to see that. And we're starting to see more and more new members to our network having these types of conversations. We are specifically not working on any specific, any projects at this point in time that answer into that, but you're starting to see kind of a groundswell build around it. And how it gets deployed in the US market will be an interesting piece to see.
So, Khaled, I saw your head shaking when Dennis was talking about the temporary housing and the 10 years. So I wanted to see if you wanted to add to that.
Thank you very much. Actually, Dennis, he actually gave a good brief about what's going on when we talk about the circular economy. Yes, we are talking now for the quality and the better cost that make affordable house to people, better utilization for the land. For maybe more than 6 years in Saudi Arabia, we are building our houses till the moment with the very conventional way. Build it with steel and concrete blocks. It takes a long time to build a house. Maybe you need, if you have good money and you can build your house fast, it will take you around 1 year to build a house. But now with the new methodology or new method of construction, talk about modulars and other stuff, talking about the cold rolled and galvanized steel and other type of modulars, that's going to reduce the time. Also in the mass production are going to reduce the cost and put a like standard and high quality in building. And now we are focused in this direction. The point here that people not accepting this. I believe that when we talk about new method of construction, it's something globally. People not accepting the new methods of construction. If I'm building my house, I put all the money in the house, so I would like to use something. People keep using this for the last maybe 100 years, so I put my money in a very safe place. We are facing the same problem. People not accepting too much the new method of construction. Also, there is a lack of skilled people to build these houses with new method of construction. So we have to build the skills and at the same time try to teach people about the benefits of new method of construction. The target in 2025 that we're building 40% of the house using the new method of construction. There is in Saudi Arabia here they accept 7 models of a new method of construction. So we try to push more towards accepting this by the people here around. There is good practice actually And with the help of Dennis and others, we are moving in the right direction.
Awesome. So we're just about at the top of the hour, and we have a question in the question and answer session. The one question that I have that if you could all briefly answer, and we'll start with Chris first. What advice do you have for students or young alumni that want to pursue a career in the sustainable housing area? Chris? That's a tough one.
What advice? I mean,
do you want me to go first?
Yeah, why don't you go? I'm really interested in what you have to say.
So yeah, I'll just, one of the things, so I worked at the Urban Redevelopment Authority for, for several years. And one of the things that I found is when I first started in my job, sustainability really wasn't an aspect that was a part of the general job description. But if you're passionate about something and if you work really hard, you can really find your path and really advocate for things that you're passionate about. And so I always say, like, start at the beginning and really, find your way within the organization.
Yeah, I think that's good. I was kind of paused for a minute because sustainable housing, I mean, there's just so many ways to kind of understand what that really means and kind of where what place you want to be in that framework. I mean, are we talking about, we could be talking about building physics and really understanding how kind of what a good wall assembly is, or we could talk about policy, which is absolutely critical to understanding how to get kind of sustainable. And, I think a lot of times we connect affordable to that, housing actually done or development, which, Dennis and Khaled know a lot about. So, I mean, that's why I'm trying to think, I teach design. That's just one that's just one piece of this puzzle. And I think my advice would be to kind of understand what all those pieces are and see where your interests lie there and kind of approach it, to your suggestion.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris. Khaled? So the question is what advice would you give to a student or a young professional?
Yeah. We talk about sustainability, you mean? Your question about the sustainability,
Yeah,
what is advice for that or in general?
Yeah, or if you have like this, really deep kind of like, this is what you need to do, we're open to those ideas as well.
Okay, if there is advice, I would like to give someone that you have to work actually to explore every field. Start for the material science. I'm a mechanical engineer. I work for steel industry, so I studied for steel industry. I came to Pitt. I was the steel maker when I went back to Saudi Arabia, started developing steel, and I believe that's my field. And have to develop steel industry in Saudi Arabia. It's okay to develop steel industry for me, but we found it business development. And when we talk about the home renovation, talk about accessibility and all that stuff, so I move around these things. Nowadays, I landed in the Ministry of Industry talking about the new method of construction, the new building of construction. Look, if there is something that you can support the society and support your country and help the development around you, do it. Don't say that I'm a mechanical engineer, I have to keep as a mechanical engineer, I am material science, I'll be in material science. So you have to explore all the areas to make a benefit, not for yourself only benefit, but also for the society around you.
Thank you, Khaled. And I'll just say, it's interesting. My brother is in the steel industry. And my uncle was in the steel industry. So we have this like long history as well. So I definitely understand where you're coming from.
They are great people, definitely.
So last question and comment to you, Dennis. So what advice would you give?
So I think building off what Chris said, it's critical to kind of know where you want to fit in this ecosystem, right? So there's every community of 100 homes has 1,000 transactions. You can participate in one or many of those depending on what role you decide to take on and influence a number of them. So I think the best thing you can do is get exposure to a number of different stakeholders or stakeholder groups And you gotta really network the heck out of it, right? Just to get to know where people's perspectives are coming from. And then, you know, there's groups like, you know, sessions like this one, Chris, I'm sure you remember the AIA, you have ULI, you have EBA, you have our organization. I mean, there's probably about 10 out there that are worth tapping into at any given point in time, just to see, you know, kind of what role they play and what role they intend to, where they're at today and what role they intend to play 10 years from now, because that's really the career you want to be designing into.
Thank you. And we have Jason just arrived here. I think we're getting the hook, friends.
Yeah, I wanted to come back on and just, Dr. Bilec, thank you so much for moderating this panel and taking us, you know, into these different conversations. By having, you know, 3 panelists on here who are operating in such different parts of this sector, it was really interesting to see, as Dennis mentioned, you know, you were all 3 on the campus at the same time, but in no way working on anything that would have crossed paths. And now here you are completely crossing paths in everything that you do in your careers. So I wanted to wrap this up. Dennis, Khaled, Chris, thank you so much for your time and for giving back to participate in this program. You know, we've heard from our alumni and our students that they really want to hear these stories and see what other alums are doing, and especially in some of these, you know, really popular broad scope ideas that are out there now, such as housing sustainability and development and innovation. So I'd like, again, just to say thank you to everybody. We'll be starting the PAA Presents series again in the fall. We hope to bring you more programming that everybody likes. Thank you all for joining us here today. And as we end most things at Pitt, I'd just like to say, hail to Pitt. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.